to our webinar. I'm Martha Van Berkel, and I'm super excited today to have RV Guha from Microsoft joining Mark and I in a conversation about preparing for the agentic web. Welcome, Guha, and welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to go ahead and jump in, and we are a semantic technology company, and so we love to introduce ourselves with our knowledge graphs. So as I mentioned, my name is Martha Van Berkel, and I am the CEO and co-founder here at Schema App. I am an alumni of MIT and Queens. I enjoy getting out on the water for rowing. I'm Canadian, and yes, I am cheering for the Canadian FIFA team. I know we're in like FIFA madness here. And I own a 1965 Austin Healey Spider. I used to, and my actual car was in the movie called Losing Chase that Kevin Bacon directed. And I share these connections and these relationships because now you've inferred you can win the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon game. Now, I mentioned I was the CEO of Schema App, and we're super excited to be hosting today's webinar. And Schema App helps you take control of how AI understands your brand. And we do that by building content knowledge graphs to ensure that your brand is understood exactly the way that you want. We love working with mid to large enterprise and are proud of actually taking people through a maturity of their content knowledge graph from clarity, where we structure the information, to understanding. This is really around understanding the entities and business concepts, to where we're able to then connect it to do AI powered customer experiences. And today we are going to talk about one of the latest and most exciting connection points of reusing your knowledge graph, which is around NL Web. That is why I have invited my co-founder, Mark and Guha, to join us. But Mark, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Martha. So I'm Mark. I am founder also of Schema App and the CTO, Canadian, cheering for the Canadian soccer team, of course, and alumni of the University of Toronto, where back in 2006, 2007, I was studying semantic technology. And so I kind of got familiar with it now almost 20 years ago, but not as long as some people in this room. And also later followed on with an MBA at the University of Toronto. But I know with the semantic technology, did a bit of research at SAP back in my master's, and really started the company in the early 2010s on semantic technology. But it's really, honestly, it was built. I kind of would say I've stood on the shoulders of giants. We have one of these giants in the room, I would say, with Guha, who's been really a keystone kind of originator of so much of the technology stack. So I love the NL Web kind of project and all the other things. But Guha, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Guha, and I'm following the most important sports event going on right now, which is of course, the T20 cricket matches. Um,
Love it.
um, Thank you for having me. It's kind of exciting to be here. And yeah, look forward to having this conversation with you.
Good. Do you want to tell us a little bit about, as we jump in here, we're going to talk about sort of the evolution of computer interfaces, right? Like, and I feel like, as Mark said, like we've had the opportunity to have conversations with you throughout your career, from RSS to where you started schema.org. I'd love to hear from your perspective. You've seen all these kind of major evolutions of sort of how the web has evolved, how sort of understanding the web has evolved, how people are interacting with information. Walk us through those evolutions and how you see it in your mind.
So we're all very fortunate that we have been through so many big revolutions, good revolutions. This is the fourth big one. The first in personal computing, and more than personal computing, in the way in which we interact with information. The first was the advent of the graphical user interface, which happened in the 80s. The second was the advent of the internet, where we went from, each of these things has to do with a different kind of uh, dimension. The graphical interface was how we interacted with, rather than typing in text, we typed in, we pointed at things. The internet brought us to a much larger amount of information. The third was mobile. And now we're in the sort of the early parts of the fourth one, where rather than deal with the computer in its vocabulary, we are able to talk to it in our vocabulary, in natural language. And so this is an incredibly interesting time from that perspective. If you look at, so my background actually is when I got into computer science, by training, my undergraduate and masters were in mechanical engineering. And
Me too, by the way. So fun connection.
And back in 1987, I got interested in this thing called AI. And at that time, people didn't really acknowledge that they were doing AI because it was considered this weird, wacky thing that those people did.
Mm.
Um, and this kind of a thing, to be able to talk to things in natural language, has long been a dream. And I think we are now getting to a stage where it can become widespread, and that's super exciting. Um, and NL Web itself it's not in, I mean, right when ChatGPT came out in November, December of um, 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 2022, I assumed that in fairly short order, pretty much every website would have that kind of an interface. 4 years, almost 4 years later, you still have only a handful of chatbots with that kind of an interface. And the question was, what will it take in order to actually have that kind of a fluid natural language interface everywhere? And that was sort of the genesis of the NLWeb project.
Amazing. And we're going to see sort of how those building blocks come together sort of when we do the demo later and in sort of, how it's going to change the way the consumers interact, right, with a brand and with information. Um, as I sort of talk to our customers and as we think through sort of like, well, how is this impacting our day to day? I often think about, like, what are we not thinking of, right? What are some of the kind of elements that we're perhaps underestimating that like maybe need to be in place or sort of that's going to happen? Mark or Guha, your thoughts on sort of like things that we need to be keeping in mind as we sort of move to this like conversational search first kind of experience of interacting with data?
Yeah.
Mark, you go first.
Okay. So I think of boring governance, honestly. Like this is kind of where my mind goes. But like, what's the sort of surface and what kind of content are you intending to express in this kind of conversational interface with agents? Like, who's really in charge of that surface area that the agents are going to interact with your site? I kind of think of it as you're at the sort of you're at the sort of exchange, or if you're not, they're just going to make up decisions about you and your business, the content they're going to discover on your site. Maybe it's sort of incoherent, maybe you're inconsistent on things, maybe on third party sites is pulling information. I think it's important to have some sort of like content governance. So like who's in charge of maybe that line of business and talking in the consistent language across the site so that it's unambiguous. And I've heard the expression of that like ambiguity is an LLM's kryptonite. And so like if you're being ambiguous in different parts of your site or subsites, like you're not really sure what kind of response you're going to get. Some might like it's a problem beyond a hallucination because it's just being fed bad data. So it's like even if you can solve for some of the hallucinations, if you're giving it inconsistent stuff, like you're going to have bad results. And so that's why I think it's important to have like some sort of content oversight, content sort of maturity that's going to get kept up to date, to be curated, and that just goes into the boring governance lab. So that's where my mind first goes.
All right, Mark, things about boring governance. What about you, Guha? Where does your mind go?
Oh boy, there's a bunch of different issues. Let me just, there's a whole governance issue, you're right. The core license, if you will, behind the way the web works, Web for Human Web, is around robots.txt. And it's an unwritten license. And it was never written because it was unclear exactly what all, when there's a contract, which is that a website said, yes, search engine, you can crawl me and I will expend the resources in generating the pages, but in return, you will give me something.
Right.
Google would give back on average, I think, somewhere between 8 and 12. For every 8 and 12 pages crawl, it would send one visitor. I think Bing was a bit higher. Now, with the modern chatbots, it's on the order of 20,000, 30,000 pages. The site might get one visitor, and at that point, it becomes not so worth it. And so we there have been attempts. So let me put in a plug for Eckert Walter and his work on something called really simple licensing, RSL. Eckert was sort of the co-creator, if in fact, if anything, the first creator of RSS together with me at Netscape. We need something like that where there is a more formal agreement between the content creator and the chat systems that are crawling this data. So that's on the content creation
Yep.
side.
Love
The
that.
second thing is in terms of ambiguity and things like that. One of the things that I was pleasantly surprised to find is that these chatbots understand schema.org incredibly well. Not surprising because they, somewhere between 75 to 100 million sites have schema.org, and these things have been trained on that data.
Hmm.
And it turns out that they are much more able to, they get less confused when they have the structured data with precise semantics. And they've learned this stuff. And so that's a very important part of this whole ecosystem. There's another thing, which is I kind of, a year ago when we launched Schema NL Web, I assumed that it was a no-brainer for sites to adopt it. And then there have been a few sites which are non-commercial sites, meaning their website is not their business, like Microsoft News and a few others who are using it. But in large part, the business and commerce of a site has been so fine-tuned over the last 25 years that people are afraid of doing anything which will shift that balance, and especially at a time when everybody is in sort of in a atmosphere where they're afraid of what these chatbots are going to do to them. They don't want to take risks. It's an interesting um,
Like
time that
dilemma, right? Well,
yeah,
it's the dilemma. It's interesting because the fear comes from it's going to be disruptive, and we've seen it be disruptive, right? Like you called out, like we're
yeah.
seeing less traffic go to kind of traditional website. Um, Fun fact: Guha, Mark, and I had lunch one time at Google almost a decade ago, Guha, and I asked the same question I'm going to ask again now. So this is just like fun for me because I get to ask like, so we're talking about like the need for governance, like the resistive to change because of like the fear. We're also sort of, like there's lots of other elements that have to be in place. Like this, how are you thinking about the role of the website? 5, maybe 10 years from now, because like that might in itself be something that we have to understand and embrace, because it's kind of transitioning away from sort of, again, being that like primary human interaction.
So there's 2 points. One is there's who is interacting with it. Is it an agent or is it a human? There's three possibilities. One is it's a human being who's interacting with the website. The second
Yep.
possibility is you have your personal agent through which you consume the website and it's interacting with that, which is probably my preferred option. The third one is it's not a personal agent, but it's one of the commercially available ones, which is going to optimize everything for the company it comes from. Um, the second point is more fundamental question: what is a website? There's one level at which you can abstract a website as a set of pages, but I think we're going to go towards a mode where go back to the origins of schema.org. Most big interesting websites now are served out of a database,
Yep.
and the it's schema.org's origin started off because Google had bought this company, which was being run by this friend of mine called John Gianandrea. Company was MetaWeb, and it was MetaWeb was being used by for some feature by Bing, and so I had to call Chi Lu, who was running Bing, to say, hey, we're doing this, but you can still continue using MetaWeb. And we started talking, and it became clear that the right thing to do was to make it possible for any website that wanted to give the search engines the actual database, not go through the web page, the HTML shenanigans, and so on. But if every website gave us a database in their own schema, we would have a
Yep.
Tower of Babel. And so we needed schema.org. And so that model basically says that a website is a database. And you don't necessarily need to manifest it in terms of a set of pages. You need to give users some way of querying that database. HTML was an intermediate thing that we did. That's great. Maybe we need to go to something else. And then in that model, it could be voice, it could be language, it could be all kinds of other things, right? And so we're going to see this evolution. And there are going to be some sites which make that transition well, and there's some which don't. And so,
Yeah, to be seen. Mark, anything you want to add to that? And then we're going to jump into like NL Web right after this.
Yeah, I like the idea of using like one sort of process for multiple purposes, right? So your website is a means for which you can publish your information for humans, for the other two classes of agents that Guha talked about. So I would rather see people have like one process to express their brand, their warranties, the different kinds of things that they want to be known for, and then it just be multi-channel at that point. And I think that kind of gives you a lot of efficiency gains, and hopefully you're not splitting up too early. Like there are other kinds of kind of concepts like that help to make it more efficient. Like a website right now, it could be. I was kind of thinking of it yesterday that. You don't read a dictionary to get the definition of governance. You basically just go to the G and you read the word, and like it's a much more efficient sort of means to do it. So a way of kind of taking Guha's idea around like these data feeds is to go a little step further with tools, and the MCP protocol is one idea for just saying, I want to know about this. I want to know about that word, that term. Tell me what you have about it and the related things, what else I can do about it. And so I think there's an important dimension to it to have the single expression that's distributed in a couple different ways and done in a way that allows you to be fully ready for agents in an efficient way, because there's a lot of token spend. I know I'm trying to make my tokens more efficient, and there are certainly ways to do that to reduce your token spend. So I think that'll be important as we go into the future. So like the handshake that between your website and those third-party agents, they should be efficient, and they should be very clear as well.
Okay, so the role of the website is this, way of expressing the brand for different types of users, right? And I think this leads us beautifully to like, what you already alluded to, Guha, but I want to kind of spend some time on now is like, with sort of the conversational kind of search being sort of like how we're learning to interact and how we want to access the world's data now, how do we start doing this on our site and prepare for agents? And this is really sort of what evolved into NL Web. So I wanted to kind of ask you
let me add one more thing, which is
go for it.
Why do we need conversation, right? If you look at an app or a site like Spotify, there's only a few things that you do all the time, and you want to optimize for that. You can look at, but there are other sites where there's a much wider range, long tail of queries that you might want to ask. If you look at a website, it's a set of pages where the website designer thinks of, here are the most common queries that a user might want to ask of my database. And then they create a user interface to be able to ask those things well. Often there are queries that can be answered by the database, which are not materialized in the design. So one of the inspirations for NL Web actually came from many years ago. I was trying to person who used to work with me, Surabhi Gupta, used to run engineering at Airbnb. And I was trying to find a place on the California coast, less than a few hours drive away from Silicon Valley, uh, which had a place, which was on the beach. And I couldn't figure out how to do it. And I sent an email to her saying, "How do you do this?" And she's like, "Well, you start off at the one end and you keep moving the map." Even though they had the data, there was no way to express it. Natural language is longer, is not as fast as clicking a button, but is a hell of a lot more expressive. Right?
Mhm.
And so there's another analogy, which is, many, many, many years ago, before the web came, um, there were client server systems. And the idea was that if for every client server system, you wrote a specialized client and you wrote a specialized server. Much of the work went into the client. The contract with the web was, you don't have to write a client. Here's a universal client. The server just has to talk in HTTP and HTML.
Love that. So it's
And
much broader, right?
yeah, which means that the cost of deploying a new system went down to close to zero because you had this universal client. And the same idea here, it's beyond the capability of most websites or most publishers to create a natural language system. And so you give them this layer. So long as you make your data available in this format, you will get a natural language interface to your data. And not unsurprisingly, because these LLMs understand schema.org, and I kind of like schema.org, um, that is a common language, which is how NLWeb is.
Great. So NL is enabling this conversational search. If someone were to, if I were trying to explain this to my mother, right, someone who's maybe not as technical, how would you describe NL Web? Like, what would be sort of like your kind of high level way of kind of describing? And I know there's a piece that's sort of conversational, but there's also a piece for agents. Can you touch on both of those?
Oh, the idea is that our agents can talk natural language.
Yeah.
And so instead of having different interfaces for agents and different interfaces for humans, create a single endpoint, which can serve as an interface to both. Now, for the humans, you might want to render it nicely in a browser and put, pretty pictures and all of that stuff, which might not be necessary quite as much for agents, but it's the same thing. That's a really simple idea. They're same
It's
interface for
very
both.
simple, right? So it's
Yes.
like, let's not do more work than we have to, right? Like have one thing. Now you mentioned you like schema.org. We know why. You're one of the founders. You got that community together. We, of course, are grateful at Schema App because that's the vocabulary we use to kind of build content knowledge graphs. Why use schema.org? Like, can you tell us like a little bit more about sort of like how that plays with NL Web and sort of what your
Sure.
thinking was as to
So
like
the
how that
basic
helps?
idea is that in order to do the processing, it would be great if we could hand over the database to the LLM. And the if we hand over database schemas vary all over the place. Same, just like schema.org was a wonderful form, a common schema to give hand data to the search engines. It's a wonderful schema to give hand data to the LLMs in order so that they can help create the natural language interface to your site. That's basically what it is, and it is already there everywhere.
Right. It's already adopted, right? So why
Yeah,
not use it? Does
yeah,
it help sort of ground or get the answers right? Like, is that sort of, does
yeah.
it
That's
help it
the
sort of?
idea. So there's a bunch of different things. One just you use the LLMs. There's different modes in which you have to be able to run. In some cases, you should be able to give the data to the LLM and say, "Here, go give me the answer based on this." In other cases, you use the LLM to better understand the query and find the right, if you it can abstract, it's a database, it's a set of items. If you to find the right items, if you will. So
Got it. Yeah, it's sort of like we talk sometimes in SEO around entities, right? Like it needs to be able to understand those business concepts, be able to answer them. One of the questions that we just had here was, looking at schema.org for prep for the agentic web, what should they prioritize on their website? Maybe Mark, you want to kind of take a first pass at this, but it sounds like if it's your database, like it's your website, right? Like that's what you should be prioritizing.
Yeah, I go to the actions sub part of the vocabulary. So there's actions which are part of websites. The site search action is something that that Google introduced as a feature. But those same actions, they show up in emails as email actions, RSVP. You can do different things with the email actions. So that part of the vocabulary is actually really well developed. And for me, I look to that part of the vocabulary to describe the different actions that you might take on the website, like the verbs, the kind of things that you might do to maybe reach out to sales or request an ebook. Those you can describe even a request inside this vocabulary so that you're kind of just resurfacing, continuing to use the existing vocabulary that has had a decent amount of success. Now, I think the actions has a great opportunity here to play a role on defining that.
Cool. So I think without further ado, let's go in and actually have a look at what NLWeb looks like. So I'm going to hand it over to Mark, and let's go ahead and see a demo within Schema App, right? So what does the Schema App NLWeb look like? So let's go ahead and jump into the demo. And this should answer people's question of like, what does it look like? How does it work? So let's jump in.
Things I wanted to share with you today. So the first is this cross-site synthesis. So across marketing support, as an example, in our website, we have multiple different sites. You can pick between the different websites. And in this example, you can see, well, what does Entity Hub and how do I perform an entity audit? This is actually coming from some of our website, as well as some of our training and even staging data in this case, which is a copy from our WordPress site. This the results show you kind of an answer, an overview, as well as we've always include a few key facts, and then the sources. So if you are curious to know about the entity manager, you can kind of click through, and that would open up another tab. And what's kind of interesting there is that it's kind of gives you one synthesized response, the same brand, two services, but it's all living in one governed graph. The system doesn't really care which subdomain it is, and for enterprises, that might be quite useful for a number of subdomains. And as an administrator, you can pick and choose the pre-select what you want for your experience. If you were to push this out to your website, you can just pick that you only maybe want your support site and your marketing site, as an example. Another interesting example is this kind of FAQ rich result. So we've kind of, what Guha and the team have created is a ability to customize those responses and actually create more richer experiences. In this case, we're just reusing the FAQ page question and answer set that that you've kind of may have created in your schema markup or in your web pages. And in this case, it's asking additional questions or providing additional questions and answers from that page, which is really great, like useful kind of information that people might be asking about. And so you can actually span, you see even more options in here. So perhaps another one that's kind of interesting is contact routing. So another kind of rich result that we've created is around contact points. And so you might be familiar with some of these from Google search results, same idea. If you have contact points defined on your website, you can even see how it's broken down by the different channels or the different contact points. So for customer support, you have the support email. If you wanted to do general inquiries, you could do a hello, and that's obviously interesting. Ours is a smaller site, smaller organization, but in a large hospital or educational institution, you have lots of divisions. So if you're asking questions about a certain division or a certain specialty department, this is a great way to surface that information unambiguously. And again, it's getting cited from those relevant pages. There's another kind of area. So what this is useful for really is, as you see here, is just a conversational experience. We put the knowledge assessment in the Schema app as a preview to how it might look like on your website. On our website, we're turning it, we've switched from our search default functionality that's more lexical search and keyword based, matching to this vector based semantic search that uses all of the schema data to provide the responses in the NL Web protocol. And so this is more of a preview experience. Some of our customers like to use this to explore like the coverage and kind of to understand like what's already included, and kind of gives you a preview as well. And so there are more administrative functions to help you match with your brand as you push it to your website and kind of hit the defaults, as I mentioned earlier. The secondary thing is really this. It's this conversational experience. So like you can kind of continue to respond to and carry on the messages. So if you want to refine the questions and explore the domain a little bit further, it's retaining some context from the conversation. And you can pick this up later. This is in memory, so you're able to come back here at a later point and pick up the conversation, which is good. So this is conversational, kind of like a chatbot, reminiscent of a chat key kind of experience. And but it's going to be hosted on your site. And then the third thing is really I think the reason why we're here is for the Agentic Web. And the Agentic Web is this emerging consolidation of tools, but it's for those AI agents that may be interacting with your site rather than kind of crawling your entire site. It can give you a request, and if you're given the ability to discover which kind of tools are available and what kind of things you can do, it gives you a way to interact with those tools. Maybe you want to provide, as an example, not just to ask questions about your content, but you want to go a little bit deeper and maybe have a booking page or have some comparative kinds of things, or to submit like submit information to request a resource, as an example. And here's a preview of the Web MCP, which is really what is one of the surfaces in which I think this will come to pass, where right now this is in the early beta in a preview mode from Google Chrome, but this is something that Microsoft and Google have got behind. And you can see here, I've just used this extension for the time being until the features are released from Chrome to interact. And so you can see here, I'd like to ask a question about brand sovereignty, and it's returning this result. So this is kind of giving you an early preview of that. That's really, I think, the one of the beautiful things of the NL Web project is that it is really reusing a lot of the existing infrastructure and creating this multi-faceted way of interacting for users, but also for the agents. And so as you build up your content, it's surfacing both of this to both of those kinds of consumers. And it's really great. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.
Thanks, Mark. Some great reactions in the chat. Like, this is what NL Web enables. And I think part of where, you Guha, when you were explaining, it's like it's a sophisticated, simple solution that allows, the website database to be interacted with human and machine. But it's also beautiful, right? Like, it's also like, meeting the needs of the consumer, sort of how they're at. We have a couple questions from people as they saw that. One was with regards to kind of like, how, like, why is this an open standard? Like, and Guha, maybe your thoughts on kind of why did you think about bringing this out as an open standard for adoption? Maybe you want to just like speak a little bit about that.
Sure. If you look at these artifacts like the web, it requires millions of people contributing. It requires literally, if you look at the amount of money that's gone into building the web, it's on the order of trillions of dollars. Can't come from any one entity. It has to come from many people. And if it's going to come from many, many people, it has to be open. And so there's some people who focus their life on taking a bigger share of the pie, and others who just want more pie for everyone. And so the bigger pie means, even if my share is as a fraction is the same, I get more pie. And so it's been easier to do the latter for me. So that's why we needed lots of people to participate. It's too big a project for any one person to do by themselves.
I love that. Now, Mark, you and your team have been using the NOL protocol, using the open source, contributing to it. Anything you want to add as sort of like the ease of use and sort of, why you think this is so important for us to kind of get working and contributing to?
Yeah, well, I really like the idea and putting it in the hands of some of the businesses out there. Like they want to participate, they want to be part of the open future agentic web. And I think the toolkit is easy for people to spin up. Relatively easy, probably need a developer to be honest, but it's something that can be done quickly, and I think it's just a great project from the point of view of the multifaceted kind of protocol that it's using and the surfaces that it has. So I think it's important to kind of carry it on, and I really like the grounded answers from the schema.org vocabulary. I mean, it is partly because we're at Schema, but it's because it's everywhere. It's in the many millions of sites that it is already in the sort of in the internet, and the LLMs have been trained on it. So it's you kind of get some of the semantics almost for free here. Like you get a kind of not quite a hall pass on semantics, but you get certainly a step forward with it.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a question that's like in that light. So let me go to it. It was like, I'm new to all of this, and what evidence do we have that agents use schema markup? This plays a little bit, Mark, to what you were just talking about. Guha, anything you want to kind of add on, like, why would agents want to use structured data or schema markup?
They get the answer. They get a more precise view of the data, and they've already been trained on it. So it's just so happens that they prefer. I don't know why they. I mean, I don't know why they do most of the things they do. But they just do.
Amazing. When I was talking to Ryan Levering at Google, he was like, it helps us get more accurate answers and it's more efficient. So like, why wouldn't we do this? Right. Like I always laugh because some of the new LLMs companies aren't very profitable yet. So it makes sense for them to kind of be smarter about how they use it. This other question is I think going to talk a little bit about like other protocols out there. Ethan asks, on a practical note, I've noticed that the best pathway we have on reporting our product catalog is actually through Shopify's UCP implementation and their Shopify catalog. What's the relationship between, Shopify's catalog and schema.org? And maybe I'll even see like WebMCP. Any comments from either of you on that?
Mark?
So they kind of have an agreement with ChatGPT with Shopify, especially the Universal Commerce Protocol. That's Google, and it's looking for structured data, structured information, so that it can make better decisions on the agentic shopping. Not a lot more to say. Like these are protocols from like some of the big players, and I think having a kind of a centralized data layer is something that can be expressed in a bunch of different formats, though. So if you have one knowledge graph, it's actually really easy to then express it in the various different protocols and different kinds of syntaxes. And so that's as a semantic technologist, I think like the applications and the protocols are going to come and go perhaps, but the data is kind of forever. And so the data is going to persist over time. In 10 years from now, you're still going to have your data, and you're just going to express it in a different way. And I think the RDF as a modeling language is flexible to carry on for lots of future use cases. So I think on that point of view, there's a lot of leverage you can get from being able to just repurpose it for the different kinds of expressions.
Anything you want to add, Guhan?
No, he said it.
All right, let's talk. You mentioned there's been an announcement this morning. Tell us a little bit as we talk about protocols, new things popping up all over the place. Tell us more.
I just put in a link to the blog post that went out. So we're now getting to a stage where there's so many companies, so many businesses that are creating different, what I call agentic resources, things for our agents to use, tools, skills, a whole bunch of new things. The web started off back in 94. We only had bookmarks. And then, Jerry Yang and David Filo had a very big list of bookmarks, so they put them up on a web page, and then they, became Yahoo.
Awesome.
We are still at the stage where all we have is you go to your Copilot or Claude or whatever else, and you put in your particular set of tools and hardwire them in. You have to go find them and so on. What we need is a search engine for agents that they can use to figure out what tools are available. And I was working on that. It turns out that some folks at Google were working on that, and many others have been thinking about this. And rather than doing this just as a service, every enterprise needs one, right? Because in an enterprise, the IT person goes and creates a bunch of tools and agents, and they need to be found by their Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever they're using. We decided to do this as a protocol with some reference implementations from Hugging Face and GitHub and so on. It was launched 40 minutes ago.
All right. So this is new. It's called Agentic Resource Discovery Specification. We love adopting new things at Schema App, so we'll be digging in and finding out more. Again, it was announced just a couple of minutes ago. As we learn more and as we try it, we'll be sure to kind of share our learnings because we are sort of looking to, it's that point with, NL Web. The whole idea is actually being able to receive those agentic requests and turn them into conversions, right? So when I think about at a marketing level, this is just another tool in our toolbox around how we do conversion optimization, right? It's about connecting with our consumer, connecting with a buyer, right? This is just
That's a
another
good way of
tool in
putting
there.
it.
Sorry, Guha, what were you saying?
Somebody asked for a demo. I don't have the demo set up here, but GitHub just did its blog post, which has a video of it working with GitHub Copilot. So
Amazing. One other last question. If using NL Web on a site, is there an upside to add technology to an LLMs.txt as guidance? Is that required?
I don't know how many. I mean, it depends on the LLM that you're using and so on. So you should consult the manual.
Have a look. Mark, any thoughts on that one?
Is there an upside? Probably some upside, although it's a bit unproven, and it is a format to sort of simplify the ability of the LLMs to read it. I've kind of just tongue-in-cheek kind of indicated that it's like 2 lines of Python code to remove HTML, like with a beautiful soup library. This is a solved problem, but it is a different format, and there's probably some value to it. And I just would like some better indication from the big LLM providers, like that they are formally supporting it on the consumption side, because Anthropic published stuff in LLM.txt, but that's just publishing. That doesn't mean it's using it on the consumption side. So I'm still a little guarded on it, but I think the NL Web is really a way in which you can also stand out, define your agentic endpoints, maybe put them in a registry somewhere that they can be discovered. As an example, put it in kind of, I'll say, the well-known places and the new protocol. I think this is a way in which you can kind of guide kind of a more efficient use. Again, it's like, do you read a whole dictionary to look up a term? I think it's still like not quite the right method. It's sort of just a bit of a step, like an incremental step function, but it doesn't quite solve the problem.
So I'm going to wrap us up here. Guha, I'm so grateful for you taking the time. Thank you for your contributions to the web, right? RSS, schema.org, and NL Web. Mark, thank you for bringing your insights today. If you want to get your organization ready for the agentic web, please reach out to us at Schema App. We're excited to work with mid to large enterprise to make that happen. Thanks, and have a super day.
Thank you.